First off, thanks for coming and doing this. I'm curious. I wanted to have you interview just for a couple reasons, which is one, probably the first place to start is maybe talk about a little bit about where you grew up, and kind of the nature of your family and your childhood in a general sense. Doesn't have to be like, necessarily super detailed, but I think when I ask you the later questions, I want people to have the perspective of understanding like where you come from.
Right.
Okay.
So, of course, I was born and raised in East St. Louis, Illinois, 1957. So it's been a while, but I'm number 8 out of 10 kids. I have a loving mother. My father passed. Mom's 97. I just talked to her yesterday. Mom had 4 boys, 6 girls. She still has 8 children. I don't know why I say only, but she has 8 children. I still am part of that big family. When I need a lot of love and focus, I always got my sisters and brothers. We're really a close family. Mom raised us that way. I mean, Mom's a very church-oriented person. My dad, not so much. When I grew up in East St. Louis, it was pretty rough. The unfortunate thing in the area I grew up in didn't have a lot. But I never knew we were poor. That's funny, I never knew that. Dad worked as a laborer for Dow Chemical Company, and he also raised hogs. We also had a place where we raised hogs on a farm, and we did a lot of land, and we raised hogs. On the weekends as kids, we would go to work with Dad, meaning we would box up and crate up chickens, and we'd set a barrel with, like nothing in it, and a barrel with water and fire underneath it. And what we would do is we would kill and dress out chickens that the ladies in the neighborhood would pick, so they would have nice food, protein in their diet. And it was funny because my dad never charged them. Dad never gave them a set amount. He always just said, just give me what you think it's worth. And we spent our Saturdays sometimes doing that, which was good. It was good just to be part of that community. I mean, you just felt like you were helping people. And in my family, we're a touchy, huggy, feely kind of group of folks. We were always close. We were close to our neighbors, and you just knew that if you got in trouble in the neighborhood, you did something wrong, one of the neighborhood ladies would always check you. They just check you. Mom would get a phone call, Eloise, Little Esther's, and immediately I'd get in trouble. So you always had that village raise a child. Back then, you didn't have that concern about the SHS, none of that stuff. You just knew that your neighborhood raised you. It was a rough part of the country. St. Louis is tough. It is.
It's actually been one of the murder capitals of
Yes.
the United States at a time or two.
At one of the time or two, it was the murder capital of the United States. And we did have a lot of stuff going on. I remember when I was little, my mom, and I was kind of frustrated at the time. She sent me to this camp. It was an all-white camp in like Benton, Illinois. And she sent me to this camp, and I was the only black child there. This was, I think, my first exposure to differences that adversely affected me. And I was the only black kid there, and one kid called me a monkey. And at the time, I didn't necessarily focus on it that much. I was more focused on them getting my name right, Lester. But they wanted to call me Leslie for some reason. And so there was this one counselor, this one young lady, blonde-haired, very tall, and she said, his name is Lester, and he's not a monkey. And it told me that somebody other than my parents and family cared about me to some degree. I mean, I still had those issues with they weren't around, but I understood it. And I recognized that there's a difference between me and them. We used to have this one kid, he was white, his name was Joey. Joey was, he was a firecracker. And I recognized that no matter what Joey did, nobody ever said anything about it, never. He would curse and da-da, and I was just wide-eyed with, what the heck? And nobody ever said anything to him. He would cause fights and cause problems, and nobody ever held him accountable. But if one of us got out of line or did something, we were in check immediately. 1968, I was still in Washington Elementary. That was the year Dr. Martin Luther King got killed. That was a tough year, I think. think I may have been in junior high, but it was really tough. And I realized the pain and sadness that my mom carried with that. That's the first time I realized how my family was affected by something that was far, far and away, but that it had a significant impact. All my brothers and sisters were crying, and my mom was sad, and I looked at those types of things, and I realized that this was more than just that person dying. This was someone who had a perspective of hope that our community had. That's kind of what that was for me when I saw that. Of course, President Kennedy got assassinated, of course, so you had these real horrific events during that time. So it was a tumultuous time, Vietnam, and that. My brother went off to the Navy, and I cried horribly. That's why I went in the Navy, because he went in the Navy. Anyway, my brother went in the Navy, and I cried horribly when he left. So as I got older, my mom told me, she said, "You need to leave." I never understood that. When I was little, it was so hurtful for her to tell me that. She goes, "You need to leave. You need to go somewhere where there's other things for you, because there's not a lot here for you." She goes, "I see things for you in other places." And it hurt me so bad, because I thought she was rejecting me. That was the hardest thing for me, because she was my champion. She still is to this day. My dad and I didn't always see eye to eye, but I loved that guy. And so when she told me that, it was hard. So I figured I'd do what my brother Ray did. I went in the Navy. So I went to the Navy, Great Lakes boot camp. Came to boot camp, celebrate graduation. All my family came up. I was so proud. Then I went aboard ship, San Diego. Then I went to hospital corps school. That's why you see this here. I was the only black sailor in my high school corps school class. It was tough. I mean, not because people were mean, but because there were certain things you weren't always included in. Everybody was treated like crap in boot camp. There was no difference. 5 o'clock in the morning, your company commander would come pounding down the road, "Get your asses up," and we'd have to get up. And I went through that. I was on a ship for a while. I could see some of the differences and tensions between crew members. And I didn't understand it. We had guys and brothers from St. Louis, Philadelphia, Texas, me from Illinois, and you see us almost establish cliques, even within the diversity, even within our ethnic group. Me and the guy from St. Louis were a lot closer to me and the guy from Philadelphia. We had some of the same commonalities. We knew about, big companies that mistreated the land, that exposed us to lead and asbestos and all those things when we were growing up. We didn't understand when we were little any more than that, but we had a lot of the same issues growing up. And then you see Caucasians. They were like radar men and electronics techs and all these other skilled positions that I thought, I got to find something for me. I can't be a decade. I met this guy, his name was Doc Cherry. He's a white guy. He had blonde hair. Kind of reminded you of the kid that was in the TV show Fury. Anyway, I met him. He goes, "So what are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know." He goes, "I think you should be a corpsman." He goes, "I've watched you, and I see how you interact with people. You seem to be a caring individual." He goes, "Maybe you should strike for me," because he was one of the corpsmen, and I was striking. That's when you're a decade and you choose a profession or a rate, and then you go into that rate, whether you're a bosun mate, a signalman, a corpsman. And he took me under his wing, and I never forgot that.
The next thing I want to talk about, because I wanted to draw the part of your childhood just because I wanted to give people some context of where your perspectives come from, because you notice even in the black community between ages, there is different notions about what justice and racial equity looks like. So for instance, if you listen to the Cosby, right, you have this generation. Don't sag. Don't say the word. Don't bump your music too loud. Don't go out of the house with a do-rag on. Don't be driving with a wife beater on and the windows down. Don't, whatever. And then you have a whole other group, the newer age goes, None of these are criminal acts. White people seem to be able to do and dress and listen to music and say whatever they would like to say.
Correct.
And the new generation goes, we want those too.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
So I'm interested to get your take. And I'm not saying one's right or wrong.
Correct.
I just want to point out that I think some of them are also product of ages. They're
Correct.
products of what did you get steeped in. And then younger people went through this generation of all of a sudden like a Michael Jordan shows up. And then you're like, wait, what's happening, right? Culturally, that's the start of it, right? Is you start all of a sudden, because it's early 80s, so you start all of a sudden getting this rap thing that you hear of in a few cities in the world, and then you have Michael Jordan. He's got gold chains and red and black shoes, and he's like playing a game in a new way. And all of a sudden, black culture starts infecting mainstream and dominant culture. And then parts of it got taken as cool, parts of it got criticized. The world was having a tricky time, and I remember like, I'll tell you this. I remember when I first had my first day in Woodinville at school, and I wore baggy pants. And I remember the first day I wore those, and they, like the Jinko pants. And I remember after the first day, they brought them in, and my principal was like, called me to the office, right? And she's like, Mr. Lewis, we just think your manner of dress is inappropriate and might incite gang activity and blah, 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 whatever. I don't know if you remember this. And then I went home, I was like, oh, she's like, so if you could not wear them when you come to school. And I was like, oh, okay, right? And I was young, so I went home and told my mom.
Right.
And my mom was like, trying to hold it together. So she goes, oh, okay. She goes, well, why, like next day, like, why aren't you wearing your pants? You just got those. You really like them. I go, I do really like them, but they told me at school I can't wear them because they think it's affiliated with gang activity. My mom's like, okay. And then I was like, oh, all right, see you, Mom. Then next thing you know, I'm at school and I get a call to the principal's office and I'm like,
your mom's
I'm like 2 days in a row.
Right.
Oh, shitty start. This is a shit start to this whole new school deal.
Right.
And then I get down there, Mom's in the office, and the principal's just like, Mr. Lewis, we just want to let you know that you can wear those jeans whenever you'd like. And we're so glad that you're a part of our community, and we hope you enjoy your time here at our school.
Exactly.
All right? And then I was like, okay, oh, awesome. All right, bye, Mom. She's like, bye. And you just realize, like, right then and there were those little things where that culture, even though it was starting to come to prominence, was still not accepted or seen as a positive. It was still associated with violence, with gang activity, with some social narrative around what black people who dress a particular way or say things a particular way, what their character is.
Right.
The same way people who had tattoos were dangerous, or people who smoked were scuzzy.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Just like these bullshit kind of correlations.
Labels they want.
And I'm interested to know kind of your process, having grown up with a mom who runs basically the full run of like, once you get out of basic slavery, then your mom's there, right? She's that old.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, and still in a sense sharecropping, if I'm not mistaken, in her childhood.
Well, I think her grandparents may have, but Mom did pick cotton every day. Jesus. Mom did pick cotton when she was a child, and Mom to this day hates cotton because she remembers a little girl opening her books and little droplets of blood would be on her textbooks from her picking cotton. So when you say that, she's not that far from that. She truly isn't. And if you ask me about the culture where I come in at, our culture was you go to school and you have creases in your pants. They're nice. Your shirts are buttoned down, you wore belts, and you wore nice, clean shoes, and your shoes were shined. You didn't dress in any way outside of the norm of what you were raised at. You saw all of us, little black kids, your pants have creases in them. Even to this day, my sister, your Aunt Nisi, she wears
crease pants?
Crease jeans. Wait, stop. No, because if you look, there's a crease line.
There's a crease in your jeans.
Because I ironed my jeans just wore them, and so you always dressed that way. You went to church, you attended those things, you participated, and more than anything else, you said, yes, ma'am. Now, I said, and part of this needs to be understood. Part of it is protocol, and part of it is respect. And I think sometimes we get the two confused. when I was little, my sister Gloria, your Aunt Gloria, she's an older sister, I said yes, ma'am, to her till I was 22 years old. She was mom's second in command. I didn't know a difference really. In that line of succession, it was mom, then Gloria. And both of them rated yes, ma'am. My older brother Bob did too, yes, sir, because that's how we were raised. And that was recognized as a sign of respect, and it truly was. Nowadays, people look at our young people who have what commonly is referred to as swag, whatever that is, and it's based on the individual. Whatever that quality is that we all have, our individuality, people see those things and they misperceive them as being disrespectful, inappropriate, cutting edge, or like you say, they wear jeans a little bit, oh, they're part of a gang. We didn't have those elements as I was growing up because the neighborhood raised you. If I threw a rock, how I was dressed, always, unless I was not at school. Now, if I wasn't at school, I could wear shorts and tennis shoes and all that stuff and play just like a normal kid in t-shirts. But when I was at school, and if you were at church, you wore suits, always. Suits, button-down shirts, and ties.
That hot-ass sun in East St. Louis, Illinois, that's the dumbest shit I ever heard in my life.
But I'm going to tell you this. When mama said, keep talking, she just gave you that look sometimes. Most people these days think you're supposed to keep talking. That's not what they mean.
Yeah, that's not what that meant back then.
Right.
Yeah.
And she looked back at you and go, keep talking. And she could give you the look. And you immediately straighten your ass up because you knew what was coming. So the norms that we had was you always did what you need to do. You always took care and was respectful of your elders. I carried my little sister's books from the day she started elementary school till the day I graduated from high school, every day, to and from school. Because that piece of taking care of each other, being respectful, being loving, that stuff came out of us in a very close-knit society. We didn't reach out. I mean, I didn't reach out. I didn't grow outside of East St. Louis, really. A lot of us didn't, And so
it was kind of like a mini world.
Oh,
you were just there.
Oh, yeah. I think the first time I saw anybody other than a black person was an insurance man once when I was a little older. That was it. And then mom sent me to the cab. I was isolated in that world. And so when you say that about the variable or the differences in our kids these days versus those days, we had, front yard smudge pots and listened to the OJs and doing the Temptations dance. That's what we did. We didn't get into a lot of stuff. We didn't have the degree of exposure and and variability in education, schools, entertainment, excitement, clothes, dress, manners, and parties, participation in a lot of other things. Yes, we always have football, we always had baseball, we always had basketball and track. We always had those things. But if you weren't in those, you were usually at home, either doing some work, doing your studies, or being right there where you needed to be. We just didn't have that.
Because one of the reasons I ask, and that's kind of the thing, is that the development of East St. Louis and the death of that city as like a manufacturing area and how bad it is now, but I mean it was never good. But I mean now it's bad because it also doesn't have any commerce,
right?
And the people that live there genuinely have to travel out of those cities to go to places to work. Has left those communities incredibly underfunded and disenfranchised.
True.
When you go back now and you see that area, which primarily exists because of redlining, because of them saying, hey, we're not going to approve black people acquiring loans outside of this area.
Right.
I'm just interested to know what it is. I think people have notions about the hood, as we call it, right? Affectionately, but they have notions about that idea that like it's a bunch of people who are either lazy or uninterested in contributing and or don't have the self-determinism or will to make more of their life. And I'm just curious, when you look back at that neighborhood and what it's gone through and what it is now, where do you see the biggest wound coming from to that particular community in your experience, especially since you're from there?
So when I look at where I grew up, I recognize there were a lot of big companies around. Dow Chemical Company, big zinc, copper, companies. You saw a lot of heavy industry. My brother, Bob, Uncle Bob, he was a welder for 40 years. James worked on the railroad, right? So there are some very industrialized and very set elements that contribute to the economy. May not directly contribute to East St. Louis economies, but to that area. It allows people to go to work and come back. They have homes. Your Aunt Gloria, she ran her own daycare. She has a master's degree in education. Your other aunts and sisters, my other sisters and uncles, they have master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, that kind of stuff. And so they're educated people, but the opportunities have gone away with more industry, with things. Railroads don't come through there that much. They don't bring commerce. They don't stop. They don't used to do. There used to be things like East St. Louis, right over from St. Louis, used to be a true hub of activity. When I was a kid, my mom used to, on Saturday morning, we'd sit there eating breakfast, and I hear a knock on the door, and there would be these people, which I don't know what they were. And they would say, "Ma'am, you got anything for a traveling stranger?" If you look back, that's when the decline of East St. Louis started. Because those people, we refer to them as hobos. It's not politically correct now, but they would ask her if she had anything for a stranger. And she'd give them a glass of water, a piece of sausage, and a biscuit. That was the first sausage biscuit ever created. And
The McDonald's was biting her style.
exactly. And I would see more people coming through that. Just stopping, hopping the train. As it's running through, they'd hop the train and try to get through because they're just going somewhere else. The one thing I realized, and I used to ask my mother, I used to get upset with her. I said, "Why do you keep feeding these people? We barely have enough for ourselves." I said, "Why do you?" She goes, and she looked at me once, and my mom, she's so sweet, but she can be as intense as a gun. She says, "Do you know when Jesus is coming back? Do you know what he's going to look like when he comes back?" And I never asked her again. Because in her world, based on how she was raised, she came from Mississippi. She came from a lot of nothing. She's there. She's got a home. She's got husbands. She's got children. She's got things that she did. She sold and all those things. So she created a lot of her own economy within our household. The ladies needed their hair done. Mom would do their hair. They needed a dress made. Mom would make a dress. So a lot of those industries that I saw growing up, was all home-based. They weren't big social things. There weren't a company that comes in that, there was no Amazon, no Google, no Nintendo. There weren't those types of high-tech companies. We had what we had. And a lot of manufacturing left. And when they left, before it used to be St. Louis, white people moved to East St. Louis, Black people moved in, and the white people moved out. That's what it was. And now they have a system of education that is one of the largest employers in East St. Louis. Are they doing well? Not in my opinion. I think they need to do better.
Knowing that childhood and that context and where you come from and how it's changed, knowing your mom's life and all the things she's had to endure and where she's at today. And like I remember you telling me like, hey, when President Obama got elected president, she's like, "Trust me, if you lived my life, you'd have never thought that was a possibility."
Correct.
You'd have never thought that was ever going to fucking happen.
And he is from Illinois.
Right. So it's even wilder,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So the thing is then the other question I'm trying to figure out is like, now we're in this era. Now it's the modern era. Now I'm 34, right? Now seems like it's my turn up to bat, right?
Yes.
And I'm going to have to live my life and endure this, and I'm going to have to find my way through it. And when you look at this current state of events, how do you feel, and what do you hope comes from this particular movement?
Well, I think the biggest thing I want out of this movement is for us to get this right, because I don't want my grandchildren going through this shit. More people set on an idea and a perspective that they're right without assessing the impact or the effects they have on other people. They truly don't. People take into account only their world. This is not just your world. We live in this all together. I don't want it to be every time somebody suffers some catastrophic event, that we all jump up. I don't want us to get there. Our thing is we should never be there. The stuff we should do now and the stuff we should have done, should have said, everything we could have done to prevent that happening. Mr. George Floyd's issue and the other people, that's the stuff that right now we need to get right. And we need to, white people need to understand, you need us as well as we need you. But you need us to be recognized as equal, just like you. Because if there is ever an imbalance on the scale, nobody is where they need to be. That's what we've lived with for so long. Somehow, we, us, need to get that right. Because if we don't, the imbalance will continue to be the way it is right now. We will have events that are catastrophic in nature that should never have happened. And if we realize that we are balanced, we never get there. That's the whole point. I don't want us to have to fix shit. I hate fixing stuff. I just like doing it right. But we don't seem to have that idea. We have the idea that, well, when the next person, we'll do it on this, but we'll do, no. Just get it friggin' right and do it right. We look for these friggin' cowbells of shit to happen, and then we jump into it. The cowbell should never happen. You tell me that I went yesterday to take a friend of mine, him and his wife, and their little girl. They went for their citizenship, downtown Seattle. The night before, I was so freaked out because they wanted me just to sit in the car with their child while they went through the stuff, but in a way that she wasn't exposed to COVID from me to her. I sat out there, and do you know what the biggest thing I worried about the night was for? Karen. That's it. Some woman saying there's a black guy in a blue Tesla watching some little Indian girl, and he's not doing anything, he's just watching her. And the police would just come, and there would be hell to pay. And who would pay it? Me. I don't want that. But yet instead, I did that because I know they add to the mix. They add to the diversity, the creativity, and they will also help us get this right. Don't fix the cowbell. Just get it fucking right. I don't want no more cowboys. I don't.
I just want to say, I think the last thing is where you're at in your life, and just as you're getting older and stuff. I think the other thing is too, for me, is it feels a little bit like I'm having the fear maybe you had, which is I'm a dad now. And I have a son. Now, my son is really fortunate because he's pretty much white passing. You wouldn't know.
Yeah,
He's got the W.E.B. Du Bois thing going on. So kind of like you wouldn't know him.
Right.
At the same time, or a Mariah Carey, right? It's not visible.
Yes.
But at the same time, you just also kind of go, yeah, but either way, whether he is black or he is white passing, you want his world to be healthy for him. You know what I mean? Even if he's not the person that's going to bear the brunt of it.
Right.
If it's his cousin Zara that bears the brunt
Yeah.
of it, right? Or whatever, or his dad or his grandpa or whatever this whole other part of his family is connected to, I don't want that for him. And so what would you say just to I think, because not all of us that look like us have dads, right? And I'm fortunate to have had a couple dads.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of young black men who could use a word from a dad in this season where they're maybe angry, or confused or really heartbroken and wanting to, rage against the machine because they don't feel like they fit. And I know some friends and some young men I work with that don't have dads. And if they were going to hear a message from a dad, what would you tell them in this season with all their feelings?
I think I guess the one thing I would tell them is that you didn't get to be you because of you. You get to be you because of the people that came before you. It's hard to stay the course, to do the right thing when you don't see an end, when you don't feel like you've got somebody watching your back, who's covering you, who loves you or cares about you. But that's not the case. The one thing I say is I stand on the shoulders of giants. And those are the people that I do the things I do. I went to that march with you, Black Lives Matter. Only reason I went, you know why? My grandson was there. I did it for the next generation. You're already grown. I don't want him and Zara to have to deal with this shit. And the people who are going through this, remember, you are laying down a framework for the next generation. It is hard. It's not easy. It's never going to be easy. But you know that you came and you stand on the shoulders of giants, and those are the people that look for you to carry the torch. I cried the day before that march because I said, my kids are out there. They are the people who have to realize there's people in the background, their uncles, their aunts, the people who look up to them, their nephews and cousins. They need what you have. That's it. They need what you have. They don't need you to be cool. They don't need you. They just need you to be the best you can be. It ain't easy. It is never going to be easy. Get past that. Until this gets right, I will have to carry the brunt. I will have to take that step. I will have to cry at night worrying about my children. They need to understand you have a price to pay to make this right. It's unfair. I agree with that. But they need to take the time to stand in the rain. Nobody knows you're crying in the rain. They don't, but you have to do what's right. Regardless of who sees it. I don't care if anybody ever sees me do what's right. My mom, I know she will look and say, little Esther, did you do the right thing? That's what they need to know. Their moms, their dads, their nephews, their children will look up and say, did my dad do the right thing? Did he lay groundwork for me? That's it.
I think that was great, yeah. Thanks for coming and sharing with me.